Hi, my name is Maveen Kaur. I'm from DiscoverYourLifeToday.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what Ram Dass and Tim Leary are dying to know. You can actually go over to DiscoverYourLifeToday.com/dying to know and actually read the article for yourself. What this is going to include today is 25 statements and thoughts from the Netflix show Dying to Know. So a little bit about Ram Dass. He's, I got introduced to him about 5 years ago. So I've been listening to his podcast Here and Now since then. His real name is Richard Alpert. He had gone and traveled to India and met a spiritual teacher out there who could teach him about consciousness and understanding how consciousness works and how it would work for him and how he could, develop enlightenment without the use of drugs, because he found that the more, when he was starting to experiment with drugs and understanding consciousness and enlightenment, that, he enjoyed that feeling, but he really wanted to get that feeling without having to do drugs, for the rest of his life. Tim Leary, I didn't really know a lot about him, so when learning about him, it was kind of interesting as well. I didn't know he had gone to jail. He had actually run for president he wanted to run for the president of the United States, I believe it was. So it's kind of interesting, a lot of the different things that these guys did back in the 60s. Tim Leary has actually passed away. I believe he passed away in 1996. But so there's a lot of things that both of them were doing back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that really transformed what we and how we think about drugs today. As of today, you'll see that a lot of the states in the United States have legalized marijuana. Canada is going to be legalizing marijuana usage in 2018. There are countries all over the world that also have as well. There's a lot of different people experimenting with other drugs as well, like LSD and whatnot, as a form of enhancing the mind to find different ways of producing and being more successful with whatever they're doing. So watching the movie, Dying to Know, I was taking some notes and really thought about some of the things that they were saying, and these are some of my thoughts from the movie itself. If you have an opportunity and have Netflix, I'd recommend that you check it out for yourself. It's a good hour and a half of learning about the culture and the subculture that is behind drugs, as well as enlightenment and stuff like that. So it is important to understand what taboos we are holding in our individual self and in society. To change the way we think, we must change those taboos. So this actually goes really well with the drugs. People used to say drugs are bad, and now a lot of these drugs are slowly starting to be legalized for everyday consumption. So it's interesting now, these taboos are being talked about, they're being understood, and things are starting to change. In many cultures, death is understood, celebrated, and talked about amongst the people. In North America, death is really still a taboo topic. You go overseas to third world countries, and death is something that they talk about, is celebrated. It's shown in the streets. In India, I know where I'm from, if people go. It's not where I'm from. I'm born in Canada, but my background is from India. People will carry a dead body through the streets and celebrate it as they take it to its final resting place. If you're going to understand others, then you must set a standard of love and surrender yourself to love. Many people believe we want to learn to think for ourselves, and we must then question the people that are in authority over us. One of Tim Leary's beliefs included that we needed to have conversations about life, about birth, about death, and about souls. Ram Dass and Tim Leary believed taking drugs like psilocybin, which I believe is LSD, better known as magic mushrooms. So a lot of people have done mushrooms. So they believe that having these magic mushrooms in controlled dosages could open up different channels of our mind. And you're starting to see this, I believe, happen in Silicon Valley now, where people are doing microdosing of magic mushrooms or of LSD and whatnot, and are really trying to open up different aspects of their mind so they can be better at their job and look for the next big thing out of Silicon Valley, out of the tech industry. To have freedom of thought at one point frightened Ramdas. That's amazing. To be afraid to have open thinking. He used to be afraid of it. Through the consumption of psychological drugs, Ram Dass realized a veil was covering his eyes. By understanding what was going through his mind, the veil began to lift. So he started to understand that, by taking these drugs, he was able to start seeing and feeling and thinking things that were not being taught in society. He started seeing things as they actually were and not the way they looked like they were. Tim and Ram Dass experimented with psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, mescaline, and LSD. Not only did they experiment on themselves, but because they were teachers, they actually were also conducting studies on others. Although these psychological drugs were banned by governments around the world, many indigenous ethnic groups still use these psychotropic plants every single day. Ram Dass and Tim Leary believed in controlling the environments the drugs were consumed in. The drugs would alter your consciousness and allow you to explore deep within your conscious and subconscious mind. Again, that has to be a control. So it's not like going to a party and taking a bunch of drugs and having like a crazy good time and waking up, feeling really weird and whatever, and having this experience that you may not understand. What they were really doing is controlling the environment, so the room the people were going to be in, they were really control, say, the music or the temperature and the atmosphere and how much drugs the people were taking. And they would start off with a small amount and really see how that small amount would affect the person. And they would try it in many different people and then up the dosage a little bit and see what kind of experiences they were having. It was very controlled, so they can then really understand it. Now, you're starting to see people wanting to do these same type of experiments using nootropics and stuff like that, which is, again, mind-opening drugs. So it's interesting how we've come full circle in almost 40 years. At the time, both believed the drugs could be used for a spiritual journey. One could go deep within and find ways to talk about the topics that are taboo in society that people do not want to talk about. Interesting enough, Tim Leary continued that path, and Ram Dass looked for more of a spiritual path without the drugs. I believe pharmaceuticals prohibit the human ability to explore deep within. So I'm saying is all these pharmaceutical drugs that we're taking these days, I believe are stopping our neuron receptors from digging deep within our minds. This is why prescriptions read, do not take other drugs or alcohol with it, because they can affect the way our mind is going to work. Many believe finding enlightenment with these psychedelics is possible, but Ram Dass believed there must have been another way. And this is why he believed in meditation and the spiritual journey. So something a little bit different. This is the things that both of them were dying to know. Was drugs the way, or could you do the spiritual journey without it? Or is there another way that now people are starting to use technology and find that enlightenment? Ram Dass and Tim Leary could explore the inner mind and the way it worked, and the way we think, and why we thought the way we did, and they were using different techniques and standards to see and figure that all out. Look around you, and you will see most of the people's problems start with a disconnect between the heart and mind. To solve the problem, we must connect the heart and mind first. Interesting enough, I think most people, because their heart and mind are disconnected, will go to drugs. And the funny thing is, if you take those drugs, they can connect you to your heart and mind. Again, I believe it does have to be in a controlled environment. As Ram Dass stated, to remove the veil from his eyes, he understood that he could find enlightenment without drugs. He believed other people could also find enlightenment without drugs. We've heard about different people throughout history who have found enlightenment without these drugs. So he actually went to the East, where enlightenment has been taught and talked about and understood for thousands of years. Today, more people are talking about nootropics and taking nootropics to open up their mind. So something to consider. You can definitely read about nootropics. There's a lot of different articles on there, and you can definitely go online and check them out. I believe a good yoga and meditation practice can open up your mind and different forms of enlightenment. There is an important question we need to answer. Am I ready for death? Many of us are not ready, and we deny the fact that death will ever come to us one day. Funny thing is, we all know we are all destined for the same place. No matter what their journey, we will all be at the same place. So a lot of these things that Tim Leary and Ram Dass were doing with their drug and social experiments back in the 60s was controlling it and understanding what people thought about death, and how they processed death and talked about death. Ram Dass to this day continues to work with the dying as well. So it's very interesting that he kept on that same path. Tim Leary and Ram Dass both studied the ancient bardos from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. They understood the journey of the afterlife and understood there has to be a way to that afterlife. I think more Ram Dass now than Tim Leary when he was still alive, though. In the last days of one's life, it costs a lot of money to keep a person living. That's at the hospitals with doctors and whatnot. They're in a state of misery and are on many different pharmaceuticals. These are the drugs we give these people or our loved ones to stay alive so we can be with them as they slowly start passing. This is the kind of things that the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about, is being with somebody in their last moments and really giving them these positive messages that you're going to be reading to them on their afterlife spiritual journey. If we want to find enlightenment and understanding, we need to learn to identify with ourselves without trying to explain the soul or the source of our God. How many reincarnations or incarnations do you think you've had? I thought this was an interesting question. It is so hard to answer because I think it's something so interesting. A lot of people want to know about the afterlife and rebirth and reincarnation and whatnot. One of the things I've always tried my best to do is, because I can't answer that question, people say we've gone through this for 4 million years, and Alan Watts said for 4.5 billion years we've gone through reincarnation or incarnations. Many people believe we've taken thousands of incarnations. Buddha believed that as well. What I try to do is try to think, okay, if I've lived all these different incarnations, let's say it's true, what lessons could I have learned in my previous incarnations that I could continue to learn in this reincarnation or incarnation? After all the work Ram Dass has done with the dying, he believes that during the process of death, the mind flows through different planes of consciousness. You could probably see that when people say they come back from these near-death experiences. They talk about the light and they talk about the things they've seen and had these experiences. There's probably because they're going through these different planes of consciousness potentially, and these are the experiences they're bringing back to us. The people we choose to spend our lives with today are the same people we've spent our eternity with. And we've gone through these different incarnations with them. So this is a thought I had is, and that's what I think incarnation or reincarnation talks about, is doing the same journey over and over again with the same people, but continue to better yourself as you go through this journey to enlightenment. So that's something that I kind of thought about as well as we're watching this video, Dying to Know. If you've watched this video by documentary on Tim Leary and Ram Dass, give me your opinions and thoughts on that video. Let me know what you thought about these 25 different points that I took from the video, and let me know what your thoughts are as well. I want you to ponder the question, who am I? Better yet, ask yourself and loved ones, who am I to you? Once you can answer who am I and who am I to you, and when people can answer that for yourself, you start to understand how people see you and perceive you. And understand, no matter how you see yourself and how other people see you, that's not necessarily the truth. You are more and then people see you and you understand yourself to be. Have these deep conversations with people and you'll see that your mind will start opening. You'll start thinking different. You'll start being different. Please leave a comment below. Go to discoverylife.com. discoveryourlifetoday.com, sorry about that, and check out different articles. Check out this article on Dying to Know by Tim Leary and Ram Dass. Other than that, I hope you go out, have yourself a great day, answer these great spiritual questions, and watch how your life can change.